members of Congress continue government spending negotiations. And more so, that is heating up as the deadline for a partial government shutdown rapidly approaches. And just as a reminder, if a deal is not reached before next Friday, March 1st, then multiple federal agencies will shut down. And then within about a week after that, the lights will go out on a host of others. So this week, members of the House Freedom Caucus sent a letter to House Speaker Mike Johnson seeking an update on their conservative policy priorities. Things that included are like abortion, immigration policy, wasteful spending on certain federal official salaries, and so forth. So what can we expect when Congress returns next week? Well, joining me now to discuss this and much more is Montana Congressman Matt Rosendale. He is a member of the House Freedom Caucus, as well as Veterans Affairs and Natural Resources. He represents the 2nd Congressional District of Montana. Congressman Rosendale, my friend, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
Good to be back on with you, Jody.
Well, listen, before we get into these other things, breaking news right before we came in, and I know there's probably not a whole lot of information right now, but it appears there may be another balloon from China floating over the West, over your state, perhaps. Do you have any more breaking information other than that?
The information I just got literally before I climbed on with you, Jody, was that there's been another balloon spotted. This one seems to be hovering over Colorado. And it, as always, it gives me grave concern. From Colorado, it can still make its way over the nuclear field that we have down there in that part of the world, that Nebraska, South Dakota, region, part of Colorado. They have the ICBMs in another location there. And we certainly know that the first Chinese spy balloon that was sent over the United States about a year ago, which was located over Montana, spent several days hovering over the ICBMs that are controlled by Malmstrom Air Force Base. And that's when we had the real big problem, the first real big problem with Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, first denying that it existed, second, denying that it was able to collect information, and then thirdly, denying that information could be transmitted back to China, which is what brought me to bring forward the impeachment resolution for him, amongst other things. So one can only hope that this balloon, maybe it is just a weather balloon. I literally just heard about it before I came on, but if it's not, then I would certainly hope that our government would take appropriate action to bring that thing down in a safe manner so it doesn't hurt anyone, but to make sure that it does not collect and transmit sensitive data back to China, if in fact that's where it came from.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be watching this. And of course, right before coming on, as you mentioned, I saw your post on X and thought, wow, here we go. Deja vu all over again, as the saying goes. All right, let's go into some of these other things. We're approaching the final window, if you will, on these appropriation bills. What do you anticipate happening as Congress comes back?
Well, when I left last week, I saw several NFL coaches out there walking around the streets of Washington, D.C., looking for punters, because I will tell you, that's the only thing that they've been able to produce on a regular schedule in Washington, D.C., are people that are willing to punt these problems down the road. And the NFL is always looking for another punter. We have
well, you can't make a team of punters.
Yeah, we have not concluded the appropriations, 12 appropriation bills for fiscal 24. And here we're rapidly approaching the time that they are supposed to be delivered, which is June 30th for fiscal 25. So my expectations, unfortunately, Jody, are very low that we're going to be able to get the parties to come together in this. When I see an article today that came out that the Democrats say the problem with all of this is the Republicans keep trying to insert poison pills insert poison pills. What we're trying to do is stop using taxpayers' funds for things that the American people don't support. They don't support taxpayers' dollars, as you stated, being used for abortions. They don't support taxpayers' dollars being used to support transgender surgeries for people that are in the military. They don't support taxpayers' dollars for the United States military to try and develop battery-operated vehicles and enrich people that support the New Green Deal. They're leftist supporters. So if that's what they call a poison pill, I just call it being prudent with the taxpayers' dollars and going to Washington to do what I was expected to do, asked to do. And so as we look next week, I'm very concerned that we're just going to be asked to approve another continuing resolution, which by definition continues Nancy Pelosi's spending levels and Joe Biden's policies. And I won't be a party to that.
Well, and we're grateful for that. I tell you, it's a mess. And at the same time, with all the list of things you mentioned that Americans don't want, they do want a secure border. And that's all been wrapped up in so much of multiple talks, as you well know, that you yourself have been heavily involved with. If we can, Congressman, switch gears a little bit because our time is slipping away from us, but you also serve on the House Committee of Veterans Affairs, and a psychologist working for the Department of Veterans Affairs was recently placed on administrative leave after speaking out against the gender ideology that you just referenced. What do we know about this so far?
So we're trying to get more information on this issue, but we do know that the Veterans Administration has been trying to promote DEI standards within the organization and diversity, equity, inclusion. And so when they start talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, they're not talking about civil liberties. They're not talking about equal rights, everyone being treated the same. They're talking about giving preferential treatment to groups that they believe have been slighted. And so what really bothers me is when they're allowing transgender men who are claiming to be or are confused and think that they are women to be sharing the same spaces as women. Some of these women have been sexually assaulted. They have been extremely stressed, and we have already invested incredible amounts of money to make sure that our women veterans, when they go into these facilities, that they feel safe, that they feel included, that they have special spaces just for them because of the things that they have gone through. And now to think that the Veterans Administration is going to turn that on its head and start opening those doors up to men who think they're women, or worse, yes, nefarious actions that they are just claiming to think that they are women is just beyond anyone's belief. And so we're trying to do everything we can to make sure that this doesn't take place.
Well, thank you for your leadership with that, and a letter that you and Eli Crane wrote to try to get to the bottom of all this. You know, at the end of the day, the Veterans Affairs is supposed to be about veterans. And it seems like they are the ones who are hurt when the bureaucracy itself gets engaged in political agenda as opposed to the responsibility and the duty, the job that they have to do.
Look, they receive $350 billion a year, and I'm trying to make sure that every penny of that gets directed to providing benefits for our veterans. And so I've got a good working relationship with Secretary McDonough. I'm hoping that he will take this letter very seriously and help us root out this misuse of funds and this just miscalculation of how people need to be treated. If a transgender individual comes into the Veterans Administration, clearly they need counseling. But I don't believe that the taxpayers should be providing for the cost of surgeries, and I don't believe that they should be allowing them into these areas that have been reserved for biologically born women.
Yeah, you know, I think the vast majority of American citizens look at these kind of battles and literally scratch their heads in disbelief that we are even legitimately having these kinds of discussions and debates on the federal level. It is just absolute lunacy to many millions of us, that's for sure. Congressman Matt Rosendale, always great to see you. Thank you for the incredible leadership you provide to your state and to our country. Thank you for joining us today on Washington Watch.
Thanks for having me on, Jody. You have a great evening.